Muy buenos días a todos, distinguidos participantes, invitados especiales y amigos. Nuevamente les doy la bienvenida a este seminario virtual sobre la experiencia portuaria en el Caribe. Este es un evento organizado por el Sistema Económico Latinoamericano y del Caribe, el SELA, junto con la Asociación de Estados del Caribe y con la colaboración de la Red de Puertos Digitales y Colaborativos y la Asociación de Gestión Portuaria del Caribe. Nos complace darles nuevamente la bienvenida a esta segunda sesión. Ayer tuvimos una jornada donde tuvimos un vistazo regional sobre cómo son las asociaciones públicas y privadas y cómo ellas nos ayudan a integrarnos y a mejorar el sistema portuario y cómo existen diferentes proyectos dentro de la región que están siendo amparados por organismos como el Banco Mundial y son objetivos de estudios para casos de la CEPAL. Asimismo, hicimos un resumen sobre el programa SELA, sobre la red de puertos digitales y colaborativos y cómo en el marco de este programa estamos enfocados en la consolidación y conformación de las comunidades logísticas portuarias como un mecanismo de las alianzas públicos y privadas. Hoy nos toca una jornada interesante con 3 perspectivas caribeñas acerca de sus experiencias y cómo abordan diferentes temáticas. Para eso le voy a dar la bienvenida nuevamente a la señora Safia Hornbeck, quien nos va a acompañar como moderadora nuevamente en esta sesión. Les recuerdo, la señora Hornbeck cuenta con más de 15 años de experiencia, de conocimiento técnicos en los ámbitos de desarrollo internacional, comercio e integración regional. Tiene una maestría en Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad Internacional de la Ciudad de México y una licenciatura en Economía y Gerencia de la Universidad de las Indias Occidentales en Barbados. Cursa actualmente estudios de posgrado en Derecho, mención Derecho Público Internacional en la Universidad de Londres. Ha prestado sus servicios como economista en el Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores y de Comercio Exterior de San Vicente y las Granadinas. Fue oficial de programas de la Organización de Estados del Caribe Oriental, es asesora y actualmente directora de la Dirección de Comercio y Desarrollo Sostenible en la Asociación de Estados del Caribe. Asimismo, administra la cartera de la organización en el área de comercio y relaciones económicas externas, transporte y turismo. Nuevamente, es un placer para mí darle la bienvenida.
Good morning to everyone, and let me take the opportunity to welcome back to the second and final day of our Port Management Seminar. Thank you for joining us on this second day. I'm already seeing some familiar faces from yesterday, or some familiar names, as we are not seeing faces. Yesterday, as Elizabeth highlighted, we discussed how the public-private sector partnership models can be used to channel investment and development financing for capital-intensive projects in port sector. Thanks again to Martin Humphrey, the lead transport economist at the World Bank, for breaking down and illustrating to us the nuts and bolts of PPPs. Your insight fully demonstrated the potential of PPPs and how our policymakers can mobilize investment for the maritime transport sector. As we learn to capitalize on this model, Mr. Ricardo Sanchez, lead economist at ECLOC, walked us through the guiding principles for the people-first approach in PPPs, so that the need for our people and our societies are addressed through inclusive policy framework. Thank you also to Elizabeth, who just introduced us, for elucidating all the great work that SELA Secretariat and the CAF Development Bank of Latin America are doing to undertake the network of digital and collaborative ports program. I see clear synergies with the direction of the work of the ECS in the area of transport, and I look forward to further collaborating with you. Today, we will focus on innovations and best practices implemented by some of the lead port authority divisions in the Caribbean, namely Antigua and Barbuda, Barbados, and Jamaica. The Port Authority representatives in these countries will present various aspects of port management that will amalgamate to produce a holistic, consolidated perspective on optimal port management practices And it is our goal that these perspectives and ideas present simultaneous innovation, stimulate innovation in your own port management practices. Without further ado, I will invite our first presenter this morning. This morning, our first presenter is Captain Carl Branch, who has been a member of the Barbados Port Inc. team for 23 years. Previously serving in the capacity of Manager of Information System Department, he is now Divisional Manager with responsibility for innovation and corporate services. Captain Branch has also served in the Barbados military as a reservist. During his military career, he received the Chief of Staff Badge for Commendation for Performance in Regional Intelligence. He's also the recipient of Efficient Decoration of Barbados Defense Force. And at the time of his retirement, he held the command of military intelligence units. He is a certified information system security professional, as well as a certified port executive. He was in fact selected as the class valedictorian at the Advanced Port Management Studies in France. Captain Branch holds a BSc in Computer Science and Mathematics and a Master's MSc in Project Management and Evaluation from the University of the West Indies, and has been instrumental in efforts to converge disciplines of technology platform to support port operations. He represents Barbados Port Inc., which was recently re-elected to chair the Technical Advisory Group to the OAS Inter-American Committee on Ports. Captain Branch is the chairman of the Stakeholder Advisory Group with responsibility for the development of port community system in Barbados. Welcome, Captain Branch, and we thank you so much for being part of our session this morning.
Thank you very much. Buenos días a todas. Muchas gracias. And that's all the Spanish I know. So I will deliver my presentation in English. Permit me to share my screen. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And before I get into the presentation, let me say it's an honor to be invited to share on the Barbados experience of integrating technology with our traditional port security and the benefits that we derive from having done so. Before we get into the technology itself, allow me to establish some context so we may have an appreciation as to why we thought the time was right to implement technology solutions. Almost 3 years ago, we had the highest overtime cost of any department in the port. Security actually was a cost center. To compound this, we had the highest level of sick leave. The security department unfortunately had a very mediocre public image and very low morale. Port efficiency, customer service, and port security often was the topic of radio programs and media reports. I would declare to you that the public perception of the port security at that time was not the greatest. So at that time, the port undertook a complete reform, including its vision statement. The original vision statement, which stood from inception for almost 60 years, was changed to reflect the following. Barbados Port will seek to become the most innovative green maritime hub in the world by 2030. In essence, there was a revision of the vision. And this revision extended to all aspects on port operations, including port security operation. So instead of the traditional view of being a non-integrated cost center, port security was now designed into the operation, providing decision-making information for terminal operations, our health and safety departments, and our national intelligence services. And it was redefined as a subset of our corporate services and integrated into the port's business plan. So the first step we took was one of due diligence, a situational analysis of sorts to determine our security vulnerabilities and our shortcomings. After that was a determination of the purpose of port security, given these vulnerabilities, and to align the technology with the purpose. We made sure that wherever there was the deployment of a technology initiative, there was some output which was measurable, because if you can't measure it, you can't monitor it. And if you can't monitor it, nobody will care until something goes wrong. The security department at the Port of Bridgetown has one of the older demographics of all the departments in the port. So because of this, we found a number of older officers were a bit apprehensive at the introduction of technology. Initially, it didn't receive a very warm welcome. Technology brought with it an understandable discomfort and apprehension, and therefore we involved the staff at every step. We held staff town hall meetings called Port Talks, which were open forums for discussion of the technology. We also operated in close consultation with the workers' union, our local health authorities, and external experts, so there could be a feeling of transparency and a benefit to the officers. Barbados Port Inc. presented this security vision for the convergence of traditional security and technology to our board of directors. Then it was presented to staff at a town hall meeting. It was presented to the union, and finally, it was presented to our National Security Review Committee. Now, security and operations share the ability to cross-reference information across a port-wide data communications mesh using Wi-Fi-enabled tablets. Therefore, the expectation of customer arrivals, cargo inspections, and other service movements of interest to security officers is derived in real time from the inputs and transactions of the operational departments. And we refer to this concept today as the one port model. Now, the most important requirement for any technology to be used as leverage in a security environment is trust. Even if people do not understand the technology, they have to trust the technology. For example, most people use mobile phone technology. They may not understand how a mobile phone works, but they trust that what they're speaking into the phone is being accurately reproduced at the earpiece of the listener. And they trust that only the listener can hear their conversation and no one else is eavesdropping. And they also trust that whenever they want to make a phone call, the cell phone provider is working. These principles of confidentiality, integrity, and availability form the basic foundation of information systems security. So it is this same principle in security technologies that we use at the port. Your users must trust the technology, but before they trust the technology, they must trust the implementers of that technology. In short, they have to trust you. So we held a comprehensive training program in all aspects of all the technologies to ensure that port security officers remain relevant and in a changing threat environment, as well as a changing digital environment. Now, this is especially relevant given the Internet of Things, where there are more digital enablers. Because in an environment where you create more digital enablers, you also create the potential for more digital disablers. Therefore, you must demonstrate a strong cybersecurity posture and a transparent application of the security mechanisms. So how do you get buy-in from staff and the public in an area like security innovation, which is generally not thought of as a core competency of a port? Well, you start small. So in 2019, the biggest security headache at the port was the management of access control during our busy cruise season. In a bold move, the port extended its digital operation by establishing a digital innovation department. In addition to its traditional IT department, and these two departments working together along with the operations built our own online QR code-based appointment system. At this time, it was for cruise operators only, but this was at a time when the use of QR codes in local business was unheard of. And then came COVID. And in 2 years, that small QR code initiative was expanded to include all service providers, members of the public, meetings, cargo collection appointments, and even non-port post regulatory agencies. The QR code system operates in conjunction with our access control business rules. And very simply, it returns an output of access approved or access denied. And this is based on the parameters set in the system or by the decision of our admissions section. The security officer is still the enforcer, but he's not the decision maker. This removed the security officer out of the line of attack from bribes, allegations, subjectivity, social engineering, and blame. And this installation provided a layer of protection for our officers and significantly boosted morale. So for the first time in the history of the port, with this technology and the use of an appointment system, port officers were aware who was coming to the port, when they were coming, and why. And we were able to optimize the arrivals and implement any special security measures if needed, as well as balance the need for dynamic placement of manpower. So at our main gate, the access control automation reduced the need for security officers to delay the process by visual inspection of passes and the physical inspection of bags. At all other entrants, our customers will be granted a QR code as a result of an application. This technology is now integrated with an artificially intelligent CCTV system, which provides security supervisors with a scope of operational information that they never had before. Technology-assisted controls would prevent security officers from becoming overwhelmed at peak periods and would negate the need to deploy extra officers at our gates during the cruise season. It also offers a layer of insulation and protection from officers by implementing physical distancing and reducing unnecessary contact. So we then constructed a small but technology-dense screening facility at our main gate. This facility is to be launched next month and to coincide with the start of our cruise season, and it replaced the need to manually inspect ID cards and personnel. It contains walk-through infrared COVID type scanners, baggage scanners, facial recognition software to expedite the tracking and movement of persons within the port, and also as a leverage for contact tracing. License plate readers negate the need to document the license plates in a book. It's a much faster processing, it's contactless, and it's safer for the officer. And the facial recognition features verifies the badge holder on the database, even if they're wearing a mask. And the intelligence system will alert officers at the command center when a person is seen inside the port with their mask off. So we see an example of that right here. So previously, the most valuable piece of our real estate was used for parking, and it was disconnected from the business and required manual security presence to regulate. So we embarked on an autonomous system of vehicular access control within the port, which was automated by the QR code and license plate readers. The integration of intelligent CCTV will let us know when the car park is full, and will translate this to Wi-Fi enabled tablets carried by officers working at the main gate or on patrol. The commercialization of this car park will now operate on a timeshare system, and port police will issue traffic charges when drivers commit traffic offenses and parking violations. And how we know when there are violations? Again, this is a function of our CCTV system. The system automatically brings to the attention of the command center when there's a parking violation, a one-way violation, or speeding violation. At the cargo sheds, the posting of a security officer is no longer necessary for public crowd control. These officers are now assigned to more meaningful and enjoyable tasks. And this is also positively impacting morale. With the recent implementation of the appointment system, only a manageable number of customers are allowed into the port at any time. So there's no longer any chaotic behavior. There's no need for a security presence to maintain law and order and crowd control. Our transit sheds are now completely monitored by cameras. And if we do need a security physical presence, that will be given by our security mobile patrol. So how do you monitor over 300 cameras? Well, typically you don't. You let the system learn and classify objects and activities according to the interests of security. And the system will alert you as to when there are exceptions. And we call this focus of attention. So at our command center, this is the base of all security operations and the central repository of real-time technology information. The command center provides oversight for all container and cargo scanning operations, as well as camera surveillance, radio monitoring, and intrusion detection at all locations in the port. The focus of attention clusters, which we see on this slide right here, each one of these represents one of our camera views. So there will be about 300 of these, and the officers monitor the colors. And each color or each symbol of a cluster represents an activity. It is then automatically brought to the attention of the officers. So the intrusion detection and object classification allows for artificial intelligence, and it can differentiate between pedestrians, civilian, and cargo handling vehicles. The system will also bring to the attention unusual traversals or movements in the wrong direction or loitering, which makes the function of general surveillance more meaningful to officers. Once an infraction is caught on camera, the security department may bring a charge. Charges such as traffic violations, speeding, parking, non-use of bicycle helmets, COVID violations may be referred to the port police for civil or criminal engagement if the offender does not wish to accept the port's penalty. So as part of our 24-hour operations, the security teams are better utilized as part of the terminal operating support element. There's a direct ship-to-scan facility which allows for the inspection of high-value or high-risk containers before those containers are even stored in the port, or it allows for immediate delivery. So this concept of ship-to-scan pre-scanning was developed during the early COVID-19 lockdown, when Barbados depended on the port to receive, scan, and deliver containers of food and essentials so that they could be available for retail distribution hours after discharge from the vessel. Vessels would discharge in the early hours of the morning, and essential items would be delivered to supermarkets immediately to be placed on shelves by the time the retailers open for business at 8 a.m. This would not have been possible without the reciprocal arrangement between port security, terminal technology, terminal operations. And this was supported by the platforms of our information technology department and our digital information systems department. The use of optical character readers provides automation and validation of license plates and container numbers, and expedites the capture of information and the processing of service vehicles. Documentation is automatic and validation is assured. Container numbers are automatically cross-referenced with manifests so that the container scanner operators are aware of what the container is manifested to contain, and hence have a predisposition with respect to what sort of image they expect to see on the scanner screen. The scanning process is no more efficient, while officers may still exercise the option to refer containers to secondary and physical screening, utilizing intrusive search or K9. Only officers who are certified on this technology may operate it, and recertification is done manually. For all operations, a running average of the truck and customer turnaround time is available for security officers to investigate traffic flow issues or the management to determine KPIs if our delivery rates drop below our service level agreement. Well, leveraging this technology enables a more efficient delivery system. Operating in real time, officers have a faster process by being readily provided with security information. And this is at the level of the officer in the field, the man actually at the gate, the lady who's actually doing the job. This creates an atmosphere of security dominance while establishing an avenue of accountability and the provision of performance metrics. So over the past year, there have been numerous allegations of unprofessional conduct. In most, if not all cases, the surrounding CCTV system exonerated officers, but the introduction of body cams was seen as a deterrent to members of the public, customers, or service providers who would have previously been inclined to behave out of order with port security. Admittedly, the idea of body cams required clear explanation of benefits to our workers' union. However, now the port has its full support, and we're currently conducting educational workshops with the security delegations with permission to deploy the devices with a 6-month review of effectiveness. So the port is a large place, it's about 100 acres, and the use of unmanned aerial vehicles, commonly called drones, is a force multiplier in the realm of physical security and operational safety. Some UAVs are fitted with thermal cameras, which detect a human body in complete darkness, even hidden between containers. UAVs can also drive operational efficiency, giving the operational managers a live video to verify the number and locations of cargo handling units on the ground. UAVs may also be fitted with a speaker to provide remote vehicular traffic control. The Port of Bridgetown has acquired drone technology, and training for drone pilots for the security department starts next month. So the main purpose of a night patrol, which is one of the key functions of security, is to ensure that there are no perimeter breaches or unauthorized movement. In order to see on a conventional patrol, security officers obviously require light. But using light from a military perspective gives away your tactical advantage and makes your position known to persons who may have nefarious activities against the port. So vehicular patrols may be quite inefficient. When using a UAV, however, it takes a patrol about 39 minutes to complete one traversal of the port, while a drone can do this in 10 minutes. The drone can therefore complete 4 patrols in the time it takes a traditional vehicle to complete one. It is also used as a rapid response to other areas of the port which are remotely separated by a waterway. So en route to becoming the most innovative green maritime hub in the world by 2030, the implementation of security technologies at the Port of Bridgetown will generate additional value in the form of efficiency, productivity enhancement, and situational awareness. In order to remain competitive, excessive operational costs must be curtailed without the sacrifice of security effectiveness. Port security officers must be retrained to remain relevant in a high performance environment. As the aforementioned technology and deployment adaptations continue to be adopted, BPI will continue to align with innovative international ports and airports, achieving international certifications as it relates to our border control facility, and utilizing this technology as a force multiplier, which will result in the deployment complements returning to a financially viable position. So with the leveraging of technology in the port, within the last 3 years, we've moved from news articles like this to articles like this. with port security being credited for the seizure of millions of dollars in contraband and the detection and the apprehension of drug and weapons traffickers, motivated by a new cadre mindset instilled in the security officers. This was unprecedented before technology. The recognition given to port security recently has improved its public image, has raised morale, and has proven its resilience, especially when a significant percentage of the department was struck down with COVID and was away from work. Despite this, the use of technology allowed that security was never compromised, nor was there ever a requirement to supplement the port security with members of the police or the military. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been our experience at the Port of Bridgetown. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Captain. That was quite a lot of work that has been undertaken at Barbados Port towards very ambitious agenda. We heard from Captain in relation to the work that they're doing towards the vision for the port. Officers who are now assigned mundane tasks are now being engaged more productively. The use of artificial intelligence within the systems allow for learning and focus on attentions and clusters by driven by exceptional handling. Infractions caught on camera allow for insurance and charges and penalties by port security personnel, and now focus on critical security tasks such like container management and production flow production. The use of OCRs, reference vehicle numbers and container numbers checked across container manifest. The CCTV and body cams were also introduced with full support of the workers' union, and the capacity building that was mentioned in relation to making sure that staff is optimal in the use of drones that has now reduced the time in terms of patrol. And of note, where he mentioned that it's now that can do it 4 times as quickly, or within 4 times the review that would have been done by normal people. Very comprehensive being undertaken, and thank you so much for sharing. I want to remind participants that they can post questions using the question and answer section of the platform. As we do not have questions at this moment, maybe we could invite the other speaker, but in the meantime, still feel free to post your questions, and we should try to endeavor to respond to them written. Our second presenter this morning is Mr. Darwin Telemark. Darwin Telemark is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Barbados Port Authority. Antigua and Barbuda Port Authority, still within the frame of Barbados. He was born in a village, Wesley, in Dominica. His tertiary education began at the University of Virgin Islands, and later on, he continued studying management and marketing at Lynn University in Florida. He holds a master's in logistics and supply chain management from the Caribbean Maritime Institute in Jamaica. His professional designation includes certified port executive, and he's also currently working on his professional port manager designation from the American Association of Port Authorities. He has many years of training and experience afforded him the opportunity to engage in a number of regional and international agencies, including the World Bank, the Food and Agriculture Association, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, CARICOM, the OAS, and the Port Management Association of the Caribbean, to which he serves currently as chair, and previously Vice Chair. Mr. Telemac is currently the Chairman of the Port Committee of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States and Vice President of Inter-American Ports Committee of the OAS. Thank you, Mr. Telemac, for agreeing to share with us, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Sophia. As I look to share my screen. One minute. Okay, before I start, I want to do two things. First, I'd like to congratulate my friend, Captain Carl Branch from the Barbados Port Inc. for an excellent presentation, and no doubt one that we will be reaching out to you, Carl, to have some further discussions on. There were quite a few ideas that I got from just listening to you, so expect a call from myself in short order. I'd also like to thank the ACS and SELA for this opportunity for affording Antigua to present with respect to our electronic port clearance system, the MSW, Maritime Single Window. But in addition to that, I'd also like to thank them for bringing together this group of industry professionals, port personnel to share. Particularly yesterday, I want to just single out Elizabeth Torres. I think she was from SELA. Hope I got her name right. And I must say that presentation stuck with us, and we at PMAC will be reaching out to do this. So I just want to highlight, and sometimes you don't get a chance to say that so far throughout this first day and now the second day, there have been benefits, at least from my perspective. And I will certainly be following up to ensure that we can continue to share those benefits with the 18 ports of PMAC, but more so with the Port of Antigua as we try to move forward. My presentation will not be very long, but it will focus on a critical component, particularly as the environment, the maritime environment, continues to move towards a more digital platform. We had discussions about digitalization of ports and the need for ports to move from the physical paper status to a less paper, and one that would create a whole lot more efficiencies in the supply chain. More important, though, is the IMO requested that all ports throughout the world move away from the physical clearance to a maritime single window. They did so with the objective of improving the interface between the vessels and the ports, and to create greater efficiencies in how ships and ports were able to transmit information between each other. So there were some security concerns, there were some efficiency concerns, but for the most part, there was the human relations concern. There was the need and is the need for vessels to be able to transmit the status of their crew, the status of their whatever the prevailing conditions are on board to the port side, so that we can respond and be prepared more efficiently. It's a little too late to wait until the ship arrives to find out that we have a problem on board. And with this single window, we are able to improve on that and radically change the interface. And there's some other benefits that we will get into. But when the IMO said that, most of our ports were concerned with regards to how do we get there. And this is where Antigua and Barbuda got, I would say, lucky. At the 41st meeting, April of 2017, there was a discussion between Ambassador Dwight Gardner, who was the permanent representative for Antigua and Barbuda at the International Maritime Organization, and his General Secretary and two other officials from the IMO, along with the country of Norway, sat down to have a discussion. Norway offered itself to provide support to a region or a country that would be interested in having a maritime single window developed. They had developed one and they wanted to share their experiences with that country. We placed our hand up. Ambassador Dwight Gadden took the charge, and Norway offered to do it, and they decided that they were going to go ahead. And what we found out was they really meant they were going to do it. It was done for free, and FREE. So we paid nothing for it, except and I like to say that because we didn't have to pay for airfares, hotels. They paid for everything, and that was quite a statement. They really, we in Antigua, in the region, as we will soon see, are grateful to a significant contribution from Norway and the International Maritime Organization. So as I typically say, first, the IMO wanted to ensure that it demonstrated a goodwill. And it was trying to ensure that there was an improvement in the environment. And the country of Norway stood up and they said, okay, we will cooperate with you. And Norway cooperated, and Antigua and Barbuda stepped up, and and with the coordination of all of our local stakeholders, we were able to bring forward something that emerged to where we now have the maritime single window functioning in Antigua. The concept, therefore, that I like to push out in these conferences is that when you have goodwill, cooperation, and effective coordination, huge things can happen. The last country in the world that probably should have stood up at the IMO in 2019 to present a single window was Antigua, but that's effectively what happened, as my presentation will show you here. So Norway offered, we designed a concept paper between both countries. We had lots of telephone conferences and all of that. And in the October of 2017, a delegation came to Antigua and they met with the Prime Minister. That's the gentleman with the victory sign in his hand. That's Prime Minister Gaston Brown. And at that ceremony, it was officially launched where representatives from the IMO, members from the government and maritime offices of Norway, and the local maritime office, Ambassador Dwight Gardner, were all present, including a port representative, when this whole event started. So from this meeting, however, we had a mandate from our Prime Minister, and leadership does matter. And he indicated to the head of all the offices, and that was the head of port health, the head of customs, the head of the port, the head of immigration, and all of the agencies that were involved in facilitating vessel clearances. We got a very sharp discussion, maybe not a discussion per se, but we got directives from the Prime Minister that this needed to be done, and everyone needed to get up their high horses to mobilize the effort to do this. I must say that his directive moved us in a direction. Since that meeting, what followed was a sequencing of additional meetings. We mobilized steering committees on the local end. So we had customs and port, immigration and agents. We had that's shipping agents. We had port health. We had plant health. All the agencies come together. And we signed MOUs among different agencies to facilitate some of the known challenges that exist at ports between these relevant stakeholders. And we were able to get a very, I think, a wonderful signed off that integrated into a very successful operation. So they came back in 2018 and they did some training with the environment was rich. So the first thing that was eliminated was the conflicts were taken out because we all understood there was a national interest at stake here. And it was not going to be one committee fighting the other. And when all of that was settled, we had all the pieces put together. And I must commend the Antigua Department of Maritime Services, led by Ambassador Dwight Gardner for this. We had the environment right, and they came back to do training. And what they met was an environment ready to accept, implement, change some areas, change some roles, some areas, some agencies that were at the apex of certain things was switched around. And there was the obvious fight, where is it going to sit? Is it going to be a customs control, port control. Who's going to control this? It emerged where the port would actually house the maritime single window, and that was accepted, and we began to build around that. Sometimes things can be derailed when individuals are not really gelling together, and agencies don't have the same understanding. They don't see the same view. The mission was to get the single window going, to project Antigua's interests in meeting the IMO deadline, and all of the agencies got to that. So in July of 2019, we had a system that we began testing. There are some people in the images that you're seeing here. There are immigration officers, there are shipping agents, there are customs individuals, there are port staff, different folks are here. There are maritime people in this image, all of them testing the system in 2018 to ensure that that would work. There were a few updates made from some of the versions that were done, but happily, the technicians in Antigua were able to facilitate all of the relevant adjustments that were required by the relevant stakeholders. Some of them were agents having a hard time uploading the vessels and the vessel information. Port security was having some trouble viewing stuff, and they overcome all those challenges, building the system to what would turn out to be something very useful. So here is the background on it, just to give you a general idea that led to the 2019 presentation in London. First, you had the briefing. Then you can see as I pull up different steps, we have where we had the stakeholders meeting and the agreement signs. We had the development stage. We had the project planning. Lots of that took place. Then the platform was built in April of 2018. The platform was actually what we thought would have been the single window. That had to be changed a few times as some of the stakeholders meetings continued. We had the pilot program coming up in October, and by December, we had a system that we felt was workable. And I will tell you, the technology is one piece, as Captain Branch just mentioned so well a moment ago. However, the coordination and cooperation that exists between the stakeholders is really what moves things. Technology is useful, but when stakeholders are not willing to work together, it really doesn't work. We had a seamless arrangement here that led to us going to London in 2019. And for one of the, I think when you think back as to how dynamic that was, we were a small island in the middle of the IMO at the FAL meeting. I think it was the 43rd FAL meeting. We were there presenting at the IMO, Antigua and Barbuda, Maritime Single Window, standing alongside proudly the country of Norway and the International Maritime Organization, having achieved something that we thought was quite an achievement. Now, the Maritime Single Window that was built for Antigua was not built just for Antigua. It's an open source software. It is now sitting with the IMO, and countries that are interested in accessing that information can get in touch with the IMO, and they can actually utilize the platform to build out their own maritime single window platforms. And so from the efforts of the country of Norway, the IMO, and the Corporation of Antigua, lots of other countries are going to benefit. Today, we are spearheading a broadening of the platform, expansion of the platform, throughout the OECS. So we are now touching all the islands within the OECS. Those 7 member states and the other 4 or 5 non-member states are all being engaged to ensure that that software from the IMO is actually going to be functional in all of those ports. One of the advantages we have in the OECS is that our legislations are very similar. Our port acts and our tariffs and all of the clearance documents, our customs documents, they're all based on UK, the United Kingdom, the British stock document, and therefore they're very, very similar, and therefore there are not too much changes that we have to do in order to adapt. So this single window that is now working in Antigua is now being expanded to include soon all of the OECS islands, including Barbados as well, who actually have a functional single window as we speak right now. In addition to building out the vessel clearance process, the technicians in Antigua were able to, they were able to go into the back end of the single window platform, and now we can upload the Asicuda manifest into that system so that we've been able to do something that was not possible in many parts of the world. So we can now have not only the vessel information being uploaded, but we can now upload the manifest into that single window, advancing access of that information to customs. And so just imagine that a vessel that is 3 or 4 miles out can have its entire clearance done, the manifest sitting in customs. Of course, that may have been done to Asicuda, but customs can see all of that on that one platform, so that there are very little concerns, issues as it relates to facilitating that vessel. And we are now adding a few other components to that. For example, the system was not built to handle waste disposal, maritime waste. We are building that into the system. We are also now looking at adding a port health component due to COVID. There are documents that Port Health has now added as a requirement to grant in pratique for vessels. We are now adding that into the system so that at all levels, everything that is needed to facilitate and clear the ship can be electronically transmitted, and so that the vessel can get there and get there very and be operating very efficiently. Now, what does that mean? In Antigua, we have a separate cruise terminal from a cargo terminal. However, we have a customs boarding office. And I said that just to highlight that the officers that berth the ship, and you can see a customs officer, an immigration officer, port health, and port security individuals going on a cruise ship. There are days when we have 5 cruise ships in the harbor. So the first cruise ship comes in and they are going on board to clear that ship. That takes some time. Then they'll go to the next vessel. That takes additional time. By the time they're done with the 4th or the 5th ship, it's almost 2 hours. Well, there's a cargo ship waiting for that boarding party to get in a vehicle, drive around the town, get down to the cargo terminal. Now they're on board that ship, and 40 minutes later, that ship is cleared. That means that dilapidating, very inefficient, unproductive time wasted can now be eliminated, because all the cruise ships can be cleared 3 miles out. By the time they reach in, you can drop your gangway and customers can start leaving. That adds time for shopping. It adds time for going on the beach. It adds time for spending. So there is the economic benefit of advancing and using this technology. Similarly, if there are goods on the container ship that has to wait to be cleared for that long, that means you don't have the grocery stores getting to sell earlier, housewives are waiting, and so quality of life and in some instances, costs are going up as the stores have to build in some of these inefficient activities at the port into their costings, and that too can be eliminated, therefore reducing some of those challenges. So at the end of the day, what you will see now with these 4 people going out to the ship is going to be removed. This is the screen that will be on the various customs, immigration, port security, port health, and agents' desk as they go away from eliminating this group to a technological platform. Interestingly though, as Carl Branch mentioned, when you advance technology, there's always the fear that the technology will displace individuals. Sometimes that is met with certain attitudes that can create a lingering effect on the full implementation and the advancement of the technology itself. Well, if you go back to the first screen, leadership matters. Prime Minister drove this, and luckily, in Carl's case, I'm using Carl because he presented before me. I'm not beating up on you, Carl. In Carl's case, the minister of the port is Mr. Humphreys. Mr. Humphreys is a minister. In Antigua, the minister of the port is Gaston Brown. He's the prime minister. And I think that makes a difference. And we are very happy that he is. We hope he maintains the portfolio because we've been able to get things moving as he is the head of customs, the head of the port. And so you're not having anyone going in between those two things. We go to him, he makes the judgment call, and in most cases, he advances the cause of improvement, advancement, and overall development in whatever capacity they're looking for. So we're going from people boarding ships to having no one board the ships to electronically engage and facilitate clearances. Here's an image showing you 1, 2, 3, 4 cruise ships. And if you can understand that boarding party that I mentioned, they will go from the one on the right to the one on the left, then they would have to come off and walk to the next pier, board the one on the right and the left, and come back all the way across, go past these 4 to the 5th one. By that time, you're in 2 hours waiting. So there are real costs that you can quantify in going from the individuals and paper to an electronic platform. And we really are hoping that more countries can reach out to the IMO, have access to the open source code, and build a platform for themselves. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Darwin. Thank you. That is quite a comprehensive presentation on the reforms that you are undertaking at Antigua and Barbuda ports. And we also took note that this is being extended to other OECS countries who are also trying to implement a maritime single window. You highlighted a number of problems in relation to the IMO directive to move from physical digital ship clearance to digital ship clearance. You call the efficiency concerns with vessel clearance and explain the need for advanced passenger information for exception handling. Through processes, you noted Norway offered its assistance in 2017, and the expression of interest by Barbuda, Antigua and Barbuda, stakeholders meeting, the agreement is signed, the system development, the testing, the adjustments, and the IMO meetings presentation. You highlighted for us the system capabilities and expansions that included the API, Advanced Passenger Information System, the ASICUDA manifest, the maritime waste management, port health requirements resulted from COVID-19. I think that is a challenge that we are all experiencing and grappling with. You highlighted the results in relation to initial states, a team of 8 or 9 to clear ships over the 2-hour period, and the new state where we speak down to no persons boarding and clearing within 20 minutes. Thank you again for that comprehensive presentation. We invite participants to pose questions in the question and answer section. Should you have any questions for Darwin? The absence of questions at this moment, we will move on to the next presenter who will be presenting for us today. The next presenter is going to present to us the updates from Jamaica. Dwayne Powell is the current Director of Port Community System Operation for Jamaica. He has been leading a national strategic project for Jamaica since 2012, April 2012, at the Port Authority of Jamaica, whereby a port community system will be implemented and operationalized for Jamaica. He currently interacts on an ongoing basis with the private sector, governmental and multilateral agencies with respect to strategies and plans for improving cargo trade and logistics within Jamaica, thus ultimately providing the doing business landscape. He currently holds certificates in project management from the University of the West Indies Customs Risk Management Certification from the CIDET Foundation, a BSc in Computer Studies and Business Management from the University of Technology, Jamaica, and an MBA from the University of New Orleans. Mr. Powell, we thank you so much for consenting to be part of the panel today, and we look forward to your presentation.
Morning. Thanks everybody for making the time and having me. It's nice virtually to meet everybody. Well done to the other presenters that went before me. I thought they were quite engaging and also quite informative, and also showcases what a number of countries are doing within the region. I want to also thank AEC, ACS, SELA for organizing this PMAC. And I'm just very happy to be here. Today, I'm going to be focusing on Jamaica's experience as it relates to a PCS, a port community system. Jamaica has been implementing a port community system for the better part of 5 years, since 2016 in earnest, but we would have started on that journey sometime before. And so basically for today, I'll go through very quickly in terms of governance frameworks, some of the modules that we have implemented, and just to highlight some of the things that you should focus on as it relates to some of the priority areas. I'm hoping everybody's hearing me clearly. All right, so in terms of Jamaica and our trade environment, I just wanted to highlight that there's no system or solution, single solution that will fix all their challenges. And so once you're undertaking or embarking on in terms of a change management, in terms of trying to improve your trading environment, then it takes a suite of solutions to really move you on that scale. In recent years, Jamaica Customs has been implementing Asikuda World, and they've materially implemented that. They have recently signed, the government of Jamaica has recently signed, I think about 2 years ago, a contract with UNCTAD to implement a national single window that will focus on the regulatory agencies, specifically license permits, certificates. The two main terminal operators have been focusing on improving their terminal operating systems and also investing heavily in warehouse space, in infrastructure, etc. Jamaica, as I said, through the Port Authority of Jamaica, partnering with Jamaica Customs and the Shipping Association being a major stakeholder, has embarked on a port community system. And then obviously we also have a trade information portal that gives stakeholders information on trade processes as it relates to imports, exports, transshipment, etc. Obviously, I assume that most persons are aware of the official definition of a port community system, but in synopsis, we basically integrate both public and private stakeholders in order to improve the competitive position of the sea and airports. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is to optimize, manage, and automate port and logistic processes. So from a specific PCS standpoint, the PCS within Jamaica, we focus primarily at a very executive level on 6 core key areas: reporting, movement as it relates to cargo, authorizations. We have a truck appointment system, tracking and tracing, and then obviously because we do integrate with so many different stakeholders, customs, the terminals, shipping lines, etc., business intelligence is a key component for us. When you're going to do a port community system, there are a number of different areas that you need to focus on. One of the things that we knew from a very early stage when we were implementing a port community system is that we didn't have all of the skill sets in-house to undertake the process. And so what we did was that we started by acquiring PCS technical consultants to assist us with the acquisition of a port community system for Jamaica. So we looked at business process reengineering, we looked at the technology, we looked at legal changes that were required. And so in 2015, the Port Authority did make regulatory changes as it relates to the use of the port community system. In terms of the benefits that we've seen so far, obviously time saving is a key component. We have less errors because of the fact that persons do have one system that provides transparency and real-time updates. Visibility has improved significantly because of the fact that the truckers, the brokers, the freight forwarders, customs, the terminals, etc., all use the same system and all do get the same updates. You can see very clearly who has done their job, who has not completed their task as yet, etc. And then obviously all of these things come together in terms of trying to ultimately reduce the net cost of doing business because of the fact that you do have less errors and less time wasted. In terms of innovation and leadership, I just want to focus in terms of the governance framework. When we started the project, and even before we started, a little bit before we started pre-implementation, in terms of best practice, we did create what is called a PCS steering committee. The steering committee is made up of both public and private sector stakeholders, and it's co-chaired by the Port Authority and Jamaica Customs. Once you're undertaking a port community system, it's very, very critical that you partner with Jamaica Customs. All of your processes, all your steps in terms of trying to improve the port sector, you really need to have customs coming along with you in terms of the journey. The Shipping Association of Jamaica is also a key stakeholder. It does represent within Jamaica all of the shipping lines, all of the shipping agents, a number of freight forwarders, and a number of custom brokers. And then obviously, as I said, at the steering committee level, you do need to have everybody at the table as it relates to port community stakeholders, from the large associations to the small associations. It's very critical in terms of your success to ensure that you bring everybody to the table because of the fact that once you're doing a port community system, business process reengineering is going to be very important. And so what you need to ensure is that any new processes that you agree on is equitable both for large and small enterprises. And ultimately, all decisions that are taken are driven from the port community steering committee, which is made up of executives from the different stakeholders. That committee then feeds into other working groups that are made up of operational persons. And so it's always a very cyclical process in terms of information flowing from the executive through the operational and back to the executives. In terms of the use of technology, Jamaica is a first mover within the English-speaking region to implement a PCS. I think we are one of the first movers also to implement a cloud solution. So at the time when we were implementing and looking at building out, data centers to use data centers that were available locally, in terms of the availability, the costs, the implications for maintenance, etc., and where the world globally was moving towards, we looked at, a cloud-based solution. We looked at our laws, our legislation, etc. We looked at the technical resources, and we decided to move in that direction. And that has proven to be very, very beneficial for Jamaica in terms of maintenance, in terms of costs, in terms of the number of resources that you need, in terms of maintaining the system, etc. Obviously, with the introduction of the pandemic, it required that less persons be on the ports, and it also, I think, fast-tracked in terms of the digitalization of less paper within the port community. I don't usually say paperless, but less paper because of the fact that you do always have some amount of paper. In terms of knowledge exchange, as I said earlier, this is not an IT project, it's really a change management project, and as such, business process reengineering is a critical component for the project. For every process, for everything that we do through the technology, we have to meet with all stakeholders. We do have to re-engineer the processes. We present it to them at the operational level, and then we move it up to the executive level. Once the executives sign off on it, based on the recommendation from the operational level, and that then we move it into the technology component. So we have a very strict governance process that we follow in terms of business process reengineering, in terms of training, in terms of consultations, with the port community because of the fact that you need to ensure that buy-in is there. As one of the presenters said earlier, technology is good, but if you don't have buy-in, if you don't have that consensus, then it won't work. And so that's been one of our key pillars for implementation. In terms of the processes that we have implemented so far through the port community system, we have completely revamped the transshipment process. We do have modules for import, we do have modules for truck appointment system and for exports. When we started in terms of implementing, we took a strategic decision at the time to implement the transshipment module. Firstly, because of the fact that 90% of the cargo that passes through Jamaica is transshipment, and it was very heavily paper-based. You have to submit at the time 7 what you call transshipment bills or transshipment declarations, 7 copies of a customs declaration per transshipment. Persons had to submit that physically. There was no e-payment at the time, so persons had to send a bearer to the terminal to pay with either cash or checks. Customs would have to go through those, and it would take probably a week or 2 for customs to go through it. If there were any errors, then you had to start over the process and do everything. We changed our process where it's now completely electronic. Everything as it relates to a transshipment is done through the PCS and submitted to customs. Customs uses for their CMS, their customs management system, Asikuda World. And so that, based on its risk management and other parameters, assesses the transshipments, approves them automatically. And we also implemented e-payment where the shipping lines or the shipping agents can then pay online. So that process has now moved from perhaps 2 weeks to about less than 30 minutes in terms of processing for transshipment. And that has been very well received within Jamaica. In terms of the import module, all maritime manifests come through the PCS for onward submission to customs. We are a message broker, and as such, we are able to accept all of the various international manifest formats from the shipping lines. We then convert those messages to the single format that Asikuda accepts. And that has been very beneficial because of the fact that the shipping lines and the shipping agents, the manifest that they submit, whether to the US, within Europe, etc., they're able to use it within Jamaica and submit their proprietary formats. We do provide tracking and tracing. Those manifests also, as I said, once they're approved by customs, we then distribute those manifests to the terminal operators who use those manifests for their operational activities. We have also, since 2018, implemented in Jamaica what gate out authorization, whereby you have 4 main authorizations that have to come together within the PCS for containerized cargo to leave, which is, we are fully integrated with customs, so we get all customs releases. You have to get what is called an electronic delivery order from the shipping agents to once you pay them, the shipping lines or the shipping will do that. We also have the identification of the trucker being done by the trucker or the brokers. And then also we are fully integrated with the terminals also. And so we do get the receipts from the terminals once you pay the terminal charges. And so those 4 authorizations come together to give you what is called a PCS gate out authorizations, which the terminals use to verify that cargo is indeed ready to be delivered to the end users. And that has been, I think, very successful also because it has improved the security and the risk management for the port and also for customs. In terms of our truck appointment system, the 2 main terminal operators within Kingston use the PCS truck appointment system. And this has reduced the congestion at the ports and improved also security. One of the terminals, in terms of their business processes, have implemented that you cannot take an appointment unless you have a valid customs release, because of the fact that, you know, persons were before taking appointments but not having all of the documentation ready, and so you were taking up, you know, space in terms of persons being able to take appointments and affecting the whole logistics chain. So we've made a number of business process changes in terms of working with the terminals to improve the truck appointment system. All the truck appointment systems now are done, as I said, through the PCS, and it does match also the capacity of the terminals in terms of their delivery capacity. And this has been going very well so far. In terms of the export module that we have implemented booking confirmations. So shipping lines and shipping agents do provide booking confirmations through the PCS. We've also implemented track and tracing for export modules, and we've removed in Jamaica what we had as the dock receipt, which was used by customs. So it's really a reduction in terms of the physical documentation that needs to be provided. The terminals also use a PCS to ensure that there is an appointment in place for exports, there is a booking confirmation, and there is a valid customs release. Once those three things are present, then the terminals will allow containers to be gated in at the terminals. Without those authorizations, then they won't allow containers that will be duly approved to come onto the port, and so that has also helped in terms of the risk management. In terms of the project risk, the implementation of a port community system is a major enterprise implementation, and so you have to always be aware of your project risk. You have to have a risk charter, risk matrix, and always be trying to manage those risks. You have to understand that a PCS itself integrates with multiple stakeholders, and so those stakeholders can impact on your timelines in terms of their interfaces being ready. You have to appreciate that different stakeholders have different capacity in terms of resources. Ensure that communication is consistent with all stakeholders, constant and consistent. Port community system, new business processes must be accepted because of the fact that you don't want to implement something through a technology process and then it's unfeasible. So as I said earlier, the governance framework is very important. You have to assess your legislative changes, and then obviously building and retaining capacity within the stakeholders or even within the PCS operator, whether public or private, is very critical because of the fact that port community systems itself, you really need resources to understand customs. Those resources need to understand logistics. Those resources need to understand what the terminals do, etc. So in terms of returning the resources within the PCS operator, it's very critical. So I just wanted to take about 2 minutes also to focus on the investment considerations. Different countries will go about implementing PCSs in different ways. For Jamaica, we started out as a PPP, a public-private partnership, and ultimately we did change our strategy, and the Port Authority of Jamaica did ultimately decide to invest it from a capital standpoint in terms of acquiring a PCS. But a PCS, as I said, is a large enterprise system, and as such, you have operational costs. Obviously, once you start to implement, you'll have, a scope of work, but that will change, ultimately over time because of the fact that once persons start to benefit and to see how the technology and the system can benefit them, the demands from the stakeholders and from the port community will always be evolving. You have to have a plan, a clear plan in terms of your technological refresh, in terms of both from a software, system, hardware, infrastructure standpoint. You do have licenses, vendor support and maintenance, and then obviously you'll have ongoing HR costs for the PCS operator. One of the things that in terms of what I've seen from PCS webinars is that a lot of persons don't focus a lot on a tariff fee, and a tariff fee consideration must be done in terms of the ongoing, to support the ongoing, costs and operational expenses for PCS. Tariff fees vary according to country, vary according to the environment that you're in, but obviously the tariff fee based on who is implemented, whether it's from a public side or from a private side, must have value for money. The fee should be simple and easily understood. The fee should not require an additional physical step for payment. And then, as I said, various countries will have varied PCS tariff fees. This table just gives you a very quick look. In Spain, for example, their fees, there's a registration fee and then there's a flat subscription fee. The Netherlands have a transaction fee. Dubai Trade has a unit fee and a subscription fee. So there is no one set, structure of the fee that will fit it. You really need to assess, the environment that you're in, the port community that you're in, the size of the community, the type of transactions, etc., and then develop a financial model that supports your endeavors. So basically, in terms of our next steps within Jamaica, we're moving the truck appointment system to integrate with the terminal operators via EDI. In 2022, early 2022, we'll be implementing at the airports. We have covered the marine sector, and so the next steps is to implement at the airports in terms of import and export, and then also we'll be moving to look at implementation of file forms, and we'll definitely be reaching out to Darwin. So I think that's it in terms of from a whirlwind, view of our activities within Jamaica. And thanks again for everybody for listening.
Thank you so much, Dwayne. Thank you so much for this presentation. So far, we have not had any questions from our participants today. I'm encouraging them again to share your questions and your thoughts with us using the question and answer feature of the platform. Dwayne, you took us through a bit on port community system and the successful implementation in Jamaica in relation to the holistic development through implementation of the port community system. The governance of the community, you noted it's key. We brought in Shipping Association, Customs, Port Authority, and the PCS stakeholders in efficiency. Encouraged wide-scale knowledge exchange, speaking specifically trainings and consultation with the port community. The demand, you noted the demand for keen focus on risk management and requires additional supportive efforts in relation to investment, which is a critical element of the PCS implementation. And PPP is a strategy for helping to manage the required resources. In relation to achievements, you told us about revamping transshipment processes, the greater input module efficiency, example, tracking and tracing of container by activity, enhanced tracking, enhanced truck appointment system, and the export module that you included. You took us a bit through your next steps, which truck appointment system expansion and airport and air import and export integration and file forms 2022. This was very comprehensive, and again, we thank you so much for your presentation. I would like to again to remind participants they can ask questions through the question and answer chat. In the absence of questions, I would like to extend an invitation to SELA through the representative of His Excellency Oscar Hernandez, Director of Relations for Integration and Cooperation, to give us brief closing remarks. Ambassador, you're on mute. We're not currently hearing.
Now, can you hear me?
Sure.
Thank you, Sophia, very much for giving me the floor. Well, now we have to say thank you for giving me the screen, right? Well, thank you very much. I'm going to switch to Spanish and say a few words. En primer lugar, en nombre del secretario permanente, embajador Clarence Endara, unas breves palabras para agradecer la participación de ustedes en este importante seminario virtual sobre la experiencia portuaria en el Caribe. Sin duda, un gran aprendizaje, y este evento nos ha señalado sobre los retos que tenemos por delante. No hay duda del importante papel que desempeñan los puertos y sus cadenas logísticas para el funcionamiento fluido de una economía globalizada. Como bien lo han expresado y lo reflejaron las ponencias introductorias del embajador Clarence y el secretario de la Asociación de Estados del Caribe, Rodolfo Sabonge, se requiere superar escollos como la crisis de los contenedores, que se garantice mayor eficiencia, seguridad y políticas más dinámicas que contribuyan a superar las barreras que nos ha impuesto el COVID-19. Además, los avances tecnológicos y la constelación de opciones permitirán, a su vez, impulsar una mayor competitividad y sostenibilidad a los puertos. Nuestra región, sin duda, tiene grandes retos. Eventos como este que hoy concluimos son una excelente oportunidad para conocer el estado de situación de ecosistema de puertos y los retos de nuestra región de América Latina y el Caribe. Esta iniciativa del SELA y de la Asociación de Estados del Caribe, con el apoyo de la Red de Puertos y la Asociación de Gestión Portuaria del Caribe, ha contribuido a comprender cómo cerrar de manera efectiva las brechas en las relaciones público-privadas y aprovechar los recursos necesarios para la eficacia de las operaciones portuarias, así como conocer las buenas prácticas de las autoridades portuarias de la región del Caribe, sus experiencias y eficiencia operativa y gestión portuaria, como bien se escuchó durante las ponencias de distintos representantes de puertos de nuestra región del Caribe. Así que nos felicitamos por tan exitoso evento, agradecemos la participación en nombre del SELA, nuestra voluntad y vocación de seguir trabajando tanto con la Asociación de Estados del Caribe como con otras organizaciones del Caribe, de la región, para fortalecer un tema y un sector de tan vital importancia para el desarrollo de nuestra membresía. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Ambassador Hernandez. It's just leave for me to give a few remarks on behalf of the ACS. Permit me to express my gratitude and that of the Secretary General on all the presenters and attendees for your contribution to the successful organization of this seminar. I want to take the opportunity to thank each presenter. Without their presentations, this webinar would not have been a success without their contribution and bringing their expertise and knowledge and experience to the seminar. To Dr. Richard Humphreys from the World Bank, thank you for laying the groundwork and fundamentals of PPPs through your insightful presentation. Dr. Ricardo Sanchez from UN ECLAC, thank you for complementing those insights with your comprehensive presentation on the People First approach to PPPs. Through your contribution, ECLAC continues to build and contribute to the work of the ACS and the region. We also want to express our gratitude to Captain Carl Branch for showing us how Barbados is using technology to deliver transparency and predictability in the way we're doing business, two fundamental aspects of trade facilitation. I also want to thank Mr. Darwin Telemark, both as a presenter and as a long-standing collaborator with the ACS, given his role in the Port Management Association of PMAC. Your presentation clearly demonstrated how Antigua and Barbuda is using the technology to manage its ports more efficiently. I would also want to thank you on behalf of the ACS for quickly jumping for the opportunity to collaborate with us and bringing the partnership of PMAC to this seminar. I would also like to thank Mr. Darwin Powell for sharing the report about Jamaica's successful implementation of its port community system. I'm sure that the information you have shared have given other port authorities across the region a lot to consider when it comes to such system. Thank you for your collaboration. Thank you again to the team from SELA for partnering with the ACS. We continue and hoping that this is the avenue for us to start a long-standing collaboration and more collaborative activities like this. We have had a spirited session over the last 2 days with various transport experts and the head of several important organizations. I know that each party and port operators and policymakers alike are working together for the greater good and recovery of our maritime sector. And I trust that your constructive engagement and collective efforts will continue. The ACS reiterates its commitment to its membership to accompany those efforts in taking the maritime transport sector forward. I wish to thank you all for the very best, and thank you once again for your contributions. I would also like to extend an invitation to you to continue to participate and be a part of ACS dialogue on a number of initiatives, including our business forum that we will be hosting on the 25th and 26th of November, 2021 this year. It will be the 4th edition of our business forum, and we're encouraging you to participate, where we're hoping to continue the private-public dialogue. Thank you so much. I would also like to take the opportunity to invite Darwin Telemark as the chair of PMAC to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I would like to say that PMAC has indeed been blessed with a wonderful bag of information, very insightful information, constructive towards the betterment of our port community and our countries. Critical to this discussion was the UN ECLAC's focus on people. Business usually focuses on its existence, outputs, inputs, outputs. But I like to think of ports as a vein that leads to people. It's an avenue. At the end of the day, no matter how technologically advanced your port, our ports are, we serve people. Some of us, our countries have one port, and that port is a critical lifeline to the existence of our citizens. And therefore, every opportunity that avails itself towards the advancement and the development of our port infrastructure, physically, through the infrastructure, technologically, through digitalization, educationally through information, is all leading towards a betterment of life for our people. We are thankful for this opportunity, both to the ACS and SELA, but all of the participants. I note the contribution from the World Bank, UN ECLAC, SELA, Barbados, Jamaica. I particularly want to thank Barbados and Jamaica, 2 regional ports that have exhibited a significant high standard of advancement in technology. And I would like to implore you to be prepared to share it with us. We are going to come knocking, and we're going to be asking for those very brilliant concepts that you've presented here to be further integrated into a Caribbean environment. One strong port is a weak port in a sea of weak ports. So as we strengthen ourselves, the objective has to be to strengthen each other, for a trade that is strong leads to a strong overall environment. So thank you, Sophia. I want to say thank you to the other Sophia as well, who spearheaded this extremely complex and sometimes difficult effort. And she didn't give up on it. And I want to commend her extreme high level of coordination and organization. Thank you from PMAC. Thank you from my Vice Chair, the General Secretary, Mr. Glenn Roach. All of us at PMAC, or 18 ports, are grateful for this forum, and we will happily join you the next and all the others that we are invited to, because this was a very beneficial 2 days. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mr. Telemak. That brings us to the end of our seminar. And thank you again to the participants and the attendees. Good morning.